regulations of the 50% rule require that if a permitting office is using that assessed structure value in order to kind of approve your permit, that they must apply an adjustment factor.
Yeah.
Locally, a lot of municipalities had kind of been using their own adjustment factor for a period of time. That's not really in line with what FEMA's regulations call for.
Yeah.
So when Lee County was going to revise their ordinance a week and a half ago, the state floodplain manager looked down that morning and said, hey, what's going on here? Y'all have to get your adjustment factor from your local property appraiser. It's clear as day in the rules on it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what put a pause and created confusion about what is the adjustment factor, what does it include, where does it come from, what is the number?
Yeah.
And condensing all of that down, I think we're going to be dealing with, if you're using assessed structure value, and let's be specific with what that means. We're talking about if you go under your parcel detail page on like the Lee County Property Appraiser site, and you click on that yellow hyperlink under the working values, and you see that letter that populates and says building value, that's the number.
That's the number.
That's the number. And if you use that number, the question then is there an adjustment factor? Well, for single family homes and condominiums, as of 3 days ago, the local property appraiser told Lee County 7%
Okay.
is the adjustment factor.
Not 15%.
Not 15%.
Yeah, I was on Fort Myers Beach. There's all these people telling, oh, they're going to give us
30.
20% now. And
Yeah.
I said, I don't know about that.
And I mean, and here's the thing, you know, what they're supposed to be using is from the assessor's office. So what they decide to do from here, you know, that's not my call. That's a policy call. But the state has indicated that they've notified municipalities that the adjustment factor that the local property appraiser produces is what, you know, you have availability to use. So I think moving forward, the safest bet is if you're using assessed structure value, it's going to be that building value number, you know, and if it's a single family home or condo, plus 7%. That's probably what you're dealing with.
It's, I mean, like I just sold one the other day that the value of the structure was $370.
Right.
So 50% of that plus maybe 7%.
Right.
I mean, with cost of material, all that, I mean,
Yeah.
how can I put that? I mean, it doesn't have drywall.
Right.
The mechanicals are all, the flooring, everything. The
lot of
roof's
work.
fine.
Right.
The roof's fine. But the windows aren't impact.
Right.
So now I've got to bring it up to code, don't I, with those windows that are not.
Probably. I mean, if the windows need to be replaced, then they're going to.
But if they're not
put
need
in
to
the
be
code.
replaced and they're original windows, I mean,
You're probably okay then on that, but that's in the category of I probably would defer, you know, to not answer that. I probably would let a contractor run with that question. But yeah, I mean, I think the spirit of the question though is about, we all know that there's properties that are not going to be able to use that assessed structure value.
yeah,
So the way that I've told everybody to think about that number that comes up on the property appraiser site, nobody thinks that's a fully, you know, legitimate number. Like that's not what that number is intended to reflect. That number is kind of a base level clearinghouse. And the reason I say, you know, don't get worked up over whether that number is high enough or not is for a lot of people, they'll be able to move through permitting immediately just off that number. Well, and that's great. And that's what they should do. And I say that as the owner of a business who has the second option.
Yeah.
So like, it's not my benefit to say that.
yeah,
But people who don't need a private appraisal for 50% rule purposes shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, go ahead and get through permitting. If that number gets you there, go. Don't worry about if it's low. We all know it's low.
Yeah.
It's a threshold just for that base level purpose.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are getting through permitting just off that. That's great.
just off that number.
Just off that. They don't need a private appraisal then.
yeah,
But for situations like you described and a lot of ones that, you know, consume my days at the moment,
yeah,
it's folks who clearly will need a private appraisal where we go through the process of determining structure value.
yeah.
And that's really kind of the second step. If assessed structure value isn't getting you there, then yeah, you need to go ahead and get
And
a
that
private
structure
appraisal.
value naturally pre-storm.
Yes, pre-storm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
pre-storm.
Good point.
I
Yeah.
actually, one of my friends asked me about, I said, you need to call Matt Simmons.
Well,
because she said something about her structure value. She's like, Mike, there's just no way.
Yeah.
And,
It's
you know,
yeah. There's we're all dealing with it. The phone
Yeah.
calls you're getting right now, the stories you're hearing, the properties you pull up and you see what's happened and you're hearing, what they're telling. It's
You just see
a lot.
so many of these ground level structures out there
yeah,
that
yeah.
have been, I mean, they're gutted.
yeah.
And
And I mean, look, here's the thing I'll say about this, and this isn't a reality that any of us like, but what happened with this storm provided a whole lot of validation to the flood maps and to surge predictions and to base flood elevations. I don't like that. I wish that wasn't the case. I've been critical over the years of a lot of these regulations, but a whole lot of it was validated
Yeah.
on September 28th.
Yeah.
And so the reality is there are some of these non-conforming structures that are going to have to come out.
we're having some technical issues, I heard.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So now we're officially live on Instagram.
Oh, we're officially
Oh.
live on Instagram
All
now.
right.
We had some technical issues.
Got it.
When
Right.
we
Well,
were
we'll
on
just-
Facebook,
we'll just
and
go right
YouTube,
back through that
yeah, we
then.
can just
Right.
start all over. No, we can't do that. So if you're on Instagram and you want to see the full, go to YouTube, go to our YouTube page, Facebook. It's going to be full live there,
Yeah.
and then it'll be recorded too. So
Yeah.
And we boost this for you too, Matt.
Right.
We want everybody to know about our professionals
Sure.
like you in Southwest Florida, and that they
Appreciate
do
it.
such a good job. You got a great group though. Mike
Thanks.
Maxwell,
Yeah.
Gerald Hendry,
Right. Yep.
incredible people.
Yeah, we've got a team built out now of I think we're 14 appraisers, 4 support
Yeah.
staff. And we do a lot of commercial, residential, and all kinds of real estate value related stuff.
And
in-
then
in
there's your
Southwest
dad
Florida.
that
Yes.
ministered.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Still at it.
He's amazing.
Still preaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great preacher.
Yeah.
So
I think going back to the floodplains, driving around town and looking at properties, obviously I pay a lot more attention to the flood maps now. And you're seeing
Right.
where places flood and where they didn't.
Yep.
I mean, even my house, I'm right by a town or river, but I'm not in a flood zone. So there's a lot of flooding around me, but I'm
Right.
an X zone and the water never made it into my neighborhood.
Exactly. That's the thing that in similar scenario for us, we're right off McGregor, but not in a flood zone, and we're at about 12 feet above sea level. And I didn't have any concern because it's like, okay, yes, we're close to the river, but I know our elevation.
Right.
But you look at what happened and where it happened, it's like those maps were really
They
good.
were pretty
They were
close.
pretty close. I mean, they're based off of worst case scenario, and that's what we experienced.
I
So-
do think, and from a real estate standpoint, with some of these properties, because of this event, even though you might be able to build back, it's easy for me to say because it's not my property, but the highest and best use for some of these properties is new construction on them and not building back that. Because I think
Yeah.
more than ever, I think the next buyer coming down, maybe mom and dad don't care about that, and maybe the kids,
Completely.
might later on, but we might be saying that even though you build it back and even though you fixed it and all that good stuff, it's a vacant lot.
Yeah, it
You
very,
know,
very well may
it's
be.
still
And
it's
that's-
still considered a vacant lot, and maybe even more today.
Right.
Whenever that time comes.
Yep.
You know?
That's part of what's been challenging also as we're talking through 50% rule with people. Sometimes the answer is, yeah, you can get where you need to go with permitting, but should you?
Yeah.
That's still a different question,
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a question that I think is unfolding and differently in different locations.
Yeah.
That answer may not be the same on Fort Myers Beach as it is, on Sanibel.
That's what we always say too. It's market specific, certain
Right.
segments.
Yeah.
There's
There's
are
no
different.
one size fits all for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's really challenging. And what else about the 50% rule that you think might be important to talk about? One thing that I was saying to you earlier was, that they're somebody locked into their taxes, because it was their permanent residence, and they think that maybe because of that, maybe their 50% was affected. But you said no, Mike.
Great question.
It's not affected by that.
No, it isn't. But I'm glad that you asked that because you have to understand with your homestead and your capped adjustments, on your tax bills.
Yeah.
Those things apply to your taxable value. And so your property has a taxable value and a just value. The just value is kind of the top line number. The taxable is essentially however much beneath that you're at, usually as a result of caps, maybe on a homestead property.
Yeah.
So you may have a low taxable value and all that benefit and a lower tax bill as a result, but the just value still exists on your property even if it's not in use. And the numbers that the assessor's office is producing are allocations of the just value. So the takeaway is you're not being penalized if you've got, a homesteaded property or this built up taxable value that usually is great,
Yeah.
but now you're afraid might be kind of ruining your chances.
Yeah.
It's not the way that the math works
Yeah.
on it. It's for just value, so you're fine on
Yeah.
that.
So like you said, if my market value is different than my next door neighbor because of whatever,
Right.
like that's where an independent appraisal will come in and,
It is.
and, instead of going by the market value, if you're really, really questioning the value of the structure, that's where we come in at. And
Completely.
that's why you hire us.
Yep, completely. And again, there's a lot of folks that unquestionably need a private appraisal to get where
Yeah.
they're going.
Yeah.
And just one note on how that kind of just works is essentially it's an actual cash value analysis that we complete. And so it's not like a traditional appraisal like you would, like we all commonly know one to be. It's one where we're creating a replacement cost of the non-conforming improvement. So that's what's kind of awkward. We're in a
Right.
way we're rebuilding, the cost of the building that we know we couldn't rebuild.
Yeah.
Right.
But we do it for purposes of figuring out what is the replacement cost of the non-conforming structure, and then we pull physical depreciation out. There's other forms of depreciation, functional and external depreciation that don't get accounted for in actual cash value, just physical depreciation. So that kitchen that is closed in and has the low ceilings, that in a traditional appraisal might be treated as a form of depreciation, you don't get penalized for that
You don't get
in an
penalized
actual
for it.
cash value appraisal.
Okay.
So it's actually a nice benefit the way that works for 50% rule.
With the 50% rule too, what about if I've done improvements within the last year?
Yeah, so that's
That's
been
going to cut into my 50%, isn't it?
well, so that's been another really good sign as it relates to the movement that's taken place from a regulatory standpoint,
Okay.
because a lot of communities have had a cumulative look back period. Like Lee County had a 5-year look back period.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were dealing with phone calls, I'm sure you were too, of people who bought that wonderful home that had been remodeled, they bought it 2 years ago for $700,000, and somebody pulled a permit 3 years ago for $300,000, and they're finding out that their structure value has been eaten up by
Yeah.
that remodeling
that
that was done
improvement.
before they ever even owned it.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people probably had roofs done from Irma too that would be counting
Completely.
towards that.
Yep.
So
Same
how's that gonna
dynamic.
work?
So that's gone away in Lee County.
So there's no
There
5-year?
is no look back period.
There's no look back at all. There's no 1 year.
Not even one.
Not
See,
even-
that
So-
that was last
okay.
week. I
So-
heard 1 year.
Yeah, let me-
So now it's not even 1 year.
I'll clarify that, and that's another reason to touch on this. It's permit by permit. So you go in, do your thing, turn around, and you're ready to go again. The 1 year change, and the reason why some of that confusion exists is there were several news articles that didn't quite hit the mark with the way they reported it. The 1 year look back now applies to repetitive loss properties. So properties that have had a claim have essentially been flooded out multiple times.
Okay.
Those properties, it's kind of like, if that happens inside of 1 year, two devastating losses like that, yeah, that property is no longer eligible.
Due to a flood.
Due to a flood.
Okay.
That's
That's
likely
not-
to happen.
yeah.
But that's the period that went down to 1
Yeah.
year.
Okay. That's good to know because we were told 1 year.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
It's permit by permit from
Yeah.
the county.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why I started this conversation with, we're getting a lot of help from our local, permitting jurisdictions and policymakers. They're doing what they can inside of the confines of the rule. Like, we're not doing things with that we're not permitted to do. We have flexibility as participating communities in the flood insurance program to do those things. It's just that some communities sometimes go beyond that to work toward phasing out non-conforming properties.
Yeah.
But we've kind of peeled that back at the moment, given the scale of what we're dealing with.
This is a big deal. I mean, we've talked to so many people, and yeah, I think time is like what we're doing. We're hearing better, answers, but also time is going by, and we're getting more inventory.
Right.
and,
Yeah. I mean,
that
it's
people
coming
are.
back quick.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. It's very difficult, and appreciate you coming in here today. But this is another topic. IRS publication 547.
All right. We're
What
talk
is that?
about tax code.
You told me about that. And I'm like,
Please,
what the heck is that?
Everybody stay with us here.
Yeah.
We're not going to
This
get
is
lost
a
in the
big
tax.
deal right
It-
here.
It is a big deal.
This
It's-
is as big a deal as 50% or anything.
Yeah, I mean, for some folks, it might be a way bigger deal.
Yeah.
So I'm going to caveat everything I'm going to say with, I'm not a tax advisor, I'm not a CPA, I'm not giving anybody individual advice either.
Yep.
But if you have a property that is of personal use, so certainly your homestead, maybe even a second home, and you suffered a loss in the property value as a result of the storm, you likely have a tax benefit that you can explore. And I'll break that down a little bit. You referenced IRS publication 547. So that addresses casualty and disaster losses. And that's where this stems from. You can look it up. It's a published document online, and read about it yourself or ask your tax advisor. But in a nutshell, if there is a federally recognized disaster and you lose property value, you're able to, in certain circumstances, take the loss in value as a direct offset to income. So let's talk about an example of that, all right? Let's say you have a property that was worth $3 million the day before the hurricane. And let's say a month or two here after the hurricane, it's worth $2 million. And let's maybe even say that loss of $1 million in value is attributable to two factors. Market conditions changes, that in this case would be not favorable, but also physical damage to the property. Those would be the two components that kind of feed into where that loss comes from. So if you didn't get any insurance reimbursement, you might have $1 million diminution that you could apply toward income. I mean, as a direct offset. So if you just think about, depending on your tax bracket, we're talking about real money.
Yeah.
If you were, for example, reimbursed a portion from insurance proceeds, so let's say 3 million went to 2 million, but you got 400,000 as reimbursement through insurance. So maybe your loss now is 600,000. The only other little caveat in there is if you use this, it does change your basis in the property.
Okay.
So you may take a property that you were at 3 million or whatever the number may be and reduce your basis as a result of this. So that's one thing that you'd say, okay, well, that's a downside.
Yeah.
But it's like any tax deferred strategy, I'd far rather go ahead and take my savings today and pay the money down the line. And here's the extra little sweet part of how it works. All right. So if your estate plan is organized in a way that you're going to use a stepped up basis and you're going to pass that on to heirs at the time of your passing, they get a stepped up basis. No one ever pays that tax bill.
That's crazy.
So that stepped up basis doesn't end up really coming into play.
Yeah.
So all
There'll
that
be a lot of
with-
people take advantage of that if they know about it, which I'm sure if they've got
Completely.
good tax people.
Completely, it's a big deal, and I'm not your good tax person, so listen to me with a grain of salt and go ask somebody who knows what they're talking about. But that's how it works.
But they will have to hire you to do the appraisal.
yeah, they will,
And how do you do that if you don't have the comps?
Yeah.
Because after the storm, it's not like we got a ton of comps for you to go by of what the current value is now after the storm.
Another great question. So right now, what we're doing on people who want to do this is we're just memorializing the pre-storm value. That's the easiest part to go ahead and say, hey, let's anchor into what we know. We had a property that was whole. We had sales data that was not inordinately influenced. The after value, we aren't addressing those yet, but what that's going to look like is we're letting the market breathe for a couple of months, a few months. I think, it would partly be disingenuous if we just used the day after and said, there were no buyers on the 29th. So, that's not the spirit of what the tax code intends.
And it's not like they need to do this right now. They can do this on
They
down
can
the
do
road.
it down the road.
That kind of thing.
You go back and revise.
Yeah.
And so the after storm values, we're going to be starting to tackle those soon, but only as the market now is speaking.
Yeah.
That we have legitimate feedback of, okay, are these ground level homes, for example, are some of them losing, appeal because somebody doesn't want to buy that anymore?
Yeah.
And again, anyone's individual benefit is going to be a function of both their tax bracket, their basis in a property, insurance proceeds they get. So it's a lot of stuff. But the after component, it won't necessarily just be, hey, the day after or 2 days after. It'll be some reasonable period of time within a few months, but a time where we've actually had the market speak about what's happened.
Yeah.
But it's a huge benefit. I mean, it's enormous, the consequences for some folks who have been made aware about it and have reached out to us, and we've worked through the numbers. And it's real money.
Oh, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I told you, we just listed one today at 7.5 or not 7.5. It was probably pre-storm, it was probably 7.5, and now it's 5.2.
Yeah. that's a legitimate loss
Yeah.
as it relates to how that works.
Yeah.
So,
And there was comps before the storm that showed that,
yeah,
you know?
yep, that is exactly what, publication 547 is intended to address.
Yeah.
And so we've told people, look, we're all dealing with disproportionate impacts in a lot of different ways, and costs we weren't expecting, and all kinds of logistical issues and whatever else. But if you have an opportunity to take advantage of something like this, use it.
Yeah.
Look into it. Use it. I mean, for a lot of folks, there won't be, an opportunity like this again. And the thing that's particularly compelling about it too is you can take that income offset in the disaster year or the prior year.
Okay.
So, if you had gains in 2021, that it would be nice to go back and amend a return and, offset some of that income, that, according to this unqualified CPA, might be available to you.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
look into it.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, like we talked about, in certain markets, we have a lot of condos, and I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with that market right there because of all the things that go into a condominium association,
Yeah.
and what they're going to be dealing with. And I don't know what the values are how they're going to play out. But again, it's nice to have something like this that possibly you might be able to take advantage of
Completely.
in a big way.
There's enough downside. If there's some upside on something like this, use it.
I tell you, when we talk a lot normally, but you don't need to talk about it. I mean, you don't need to ask him any questions or because it's just.
I rambled on
I'm
enough
just-
for
But
us
I'm
all
just
to know.
looking at you and I'm just listening because again, we don't know. We've heard so many things just like the general public out there.
Yeah.
And we're the professionals, but we're not the professional on the 50% rule and all that. And
It's its own world.
Yeah.
And so we've told people, we've spent a lot of time digging into the issue, working with policymakers on
Yeah.
talking about what ordinances might look like, trying to work with the assessor's office on, how their numbers get used. So we've tried to bridge some of that because we touch all that stuff. And so we're trying to act as a liaison to the community and provide the information that we have. And again, first and foremost saying, if you don't need us, don't spend the money on an appraisal.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. We
Yeah.
hope people can get through the system without needing that.
Yeah.
But if you do, know that next step is available.
Yeah, there's a lot of good appraisals out there, but I tell
Yeah.
you, I always give multiple names, but I always say Matt Simmons.
appreciate
Man,
that.
he's the best. And
Thanks, Mark.
and there's other, again, like I said, other good appraisals.
Sure.
But this is uncharted territory here, and
It is.
You better make sure you get what you pay for.
Yep.
And you want the best people representing you and
Yeah.
give you the information that you need. You know it all. I'm telling you. I mean,
appreciate
you've done a
that.
great job, and we appreciate it. And
No,
you
enjoyed
know,
being here.
happy to give your name because you know the stuff. You know
Thanks,
this
Mike.
stuff. So
Appreciate
it,
that.
Matt.
Yeah.
We're going to touch on the market real quick.
Great.
But I appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Respect
Yeah,
and appreciate
thanks,
you
Tom.
very
You
much.
got it. Soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys.
Hopefully we'll have you in again.
Sounds good.
So we're going to touch on real estate real quick, Tom.
Yeah.
I heard
But-
there's a pretty big contract that happened on Sanibel Island.
It was, and I had another one today. They're putting their property on the market, and they're having a tough time with it because it's like there's a lot of unfortunate situations out there where maybe people, with the sale of and what they're going through with their property, maybe they're not so fortunate. But there are some properties out there that are incredible properties that are going to, do well in the marketplace regardless. Got another one coming out, probably, multi-million-dollar property on the water, just amazing, fantastic property. But they kind of they feel guilty of putting it on the market because so many people are suffering and going through this. But
Right.
you can't be that way. We got to get back and those sales when they happen at 12 million on the beach, that's good for the market.
Right.
That gives hope. That gives it. People still believe in this market, and this market's going to come back bigger and stronger. It's going to take a while for some areas a little bit more, but so far for the last 45, 50 days, we've done close to 50 million.
Yeah.
I was looking at the numbers for the year. We're about 170 closed already on top of that 50 million. So do the math. We've had a good year, and we've had a good month. 8 closings since the storm. We've got, and that's 9 million in those 8 million. What else do we have here? one record sale. We said 12 million on the beach. We had the listing and we had the buyer. And the buyer is extremely happy to have 300 feet and
Oh,
an
yeah.
incredible home. Yeah, the yard's a little messed up, but we'll fix that real quick. And
Well, I mean, there's a little silver lining. I mean, it's just such an unfortunate situation, but we're starting to see more inventory than we have seen the past 2 to 3 years. I
and
mean,
it's selling too.
and it's selling.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of them that aren't selling as fast, but we've had 25 listings since the storm, and
Yeah.
a lot of those 25 have gone under contract. So a lot of good stuff going on out there in the market. Don't give your property away.
Oh, yeah. I
Call us
mean,
today.
I mean, we were in the forest.
rhymes.
We were in the forest the other day, and I was looking at some off-market sales, and I think we're getting about 60, 75 grand higher than what they sold to an investor.
Yeah.
The same house, all we had to do is take a couple of pictures and put it on the MLS, and they would have got way more money.
Well, I've looked at some of the sales. I mean, big or small, we do it all. We've always said that. We had one for 45,000, but we've also had one for 12 million. So we've got a lot of different numbers in there, 300,000, 125, million one, 2.2, 3 million.
You've
a
got
lot of sales in there.
flooded
different
houses, damaged houses, undamaged houses.
Yeah.
There's definitely a market for them all.
Yeah, we got some new listings coming out, pretty exciting, and I think a lot of buyers out there for. Anything else you got for the market?
We got some more data coming out here in the next week. So next week we'll share some more data about, what's happened since the storm, the closings, the contracts, and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
we're almost 2 months.
Yeah, it's
we're almost
crazy.
to 2 months next week. So
You go out on Sanibel, you go to Fort Myers Beach, and those piles
Yeah.
they get picked up, and then the next day
there's a
they're
new
back
pile
there.
that's bigger.
And it wears on you. And but we'll get through it. The trees are turning green. Everybody's working hard. We've come a long way so far. In the next 2-3 months, we're going to be that much farther ahead, and it's going to look a lot different. But we still got a long road ahead of
Oh
us.
yeah, I think I saw Margaritaville's already put another floor on top of their Gulf front property there. So
That's crazy.
They're rocking and rolling there. I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't look like there's a lot of difference in the amount of debris, but it's getting out.
And everybody's working together.
Yeah.
Like Matt was saying, this is Southwest Florida, Lee County, all of us together. Everybody talks about Fort Myers strong, Fort Myers Beach strong, Sanibel strong. It's Southwest Florida strong.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's got to work together on this, and we'll get back. So, McMurray members live tonight. If you have any questions, give us a call. We've got all the right partners to put you in touch with. We're not the experts on insurance. We're not the experts on appraisals, but we know the right people for you to call. We've been doing it for 30 years at a top level, big or small, we do it all, and we're here to help you. That's the most important thing that we try to do is help people, and we do a great job of that. So join us again. We're not going to be on for
Oh
Thanksgiving.
yeah, Thanksgiving next week.
So happy Thanksgiving. Try to enjoy your time, and weather's getting better
It's
down here.
pretty nice out there
Pretty
today.
nice right now, and it's really cold up north.
Oh yeah.
So still, come to Southwest Florida. We want you here, and it's beautiful. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, listening in. If you have any questions for Matt Simmons, he's at Maxwell Hendry Simmons, Real Estate Appraisals and Consultants. Again, a lot of great appraisals out there, but they're, I think, the best or one of the best out there in Southwest Florida. So good night.
We'll see you on the next live.
Yep.